It's been dark way too long in this place. That bright smile long gone been replaced. From ear to ear I see that fear in your face. Tell me when the last time you felt safe, cause there's some evil people in the streets. Evil at your front door, creeping while you sleep. It's time to raise up, show that evil we ain't weak. We don't turn the other cheek, I can show you how to be strong. Come on, follow me. Heard you looking for a hero. Well, look up. No more running from the bad guy. I'ma stare him in the eye like, what's up? I know the journey got hard for a minute, but I ain't giving this up. Yeah, I got the heart of a champion. If I get knocked down, I get back up. We go through bad days, hard times, low pay, high crime, pathways to a life without sunshine. I'm the lifeline. With this life, I'm gonna be the pipeline, shining in the night.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live chat tonight with our infamous author, Edward Pocock III of American Calamity. Welcome, Edward.
Hey, guys.
Welcome,
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're going to give everyone just a few seconds here to get online and get logged in to our YouTube, and appreciate everyone that's joining us here live tonight. As you join us, give us a little hello, hit that like button, let us know you're here, maybe tell us where you're listening from and where you're logging in from. Great to see you guys online. We've got Coyote Maine on, Jeff
Hey,
Conn
Coyote.
on. How are you? Excellent.
Yeah, hello.
Good.
It's nice to see when everybody checks in and they say hi.
Absolutely.
So,
How's the weather down where you are?
rain. A lot of rain.
It's been
Yeah,
raining
a lot
there
of-
for a while.
Yeah. It's if you live in a low area right now, not so good.
Yeah, it's been raining up here. We had snow, as you probably heard. We got about 24 inches of snow 5 days ago, and now it's melting, and we got rain and warmer temperatures. So, Katharina, great to see you online. Coyote, excited to hear from the author. Excellent.
Yeah, that's great.
Samantha,
hello.
happy to be back with you guys. Welcome back, Samantha. You're joining us Tuesday. Great to see you back online with us tonight. So we're going to get started here with Edward, and I am honored to have him on our broadcast this evening. Edward, can you just take a second and kind of give us your background, and for people who don't know or didn't have an opportunity to really kind of dig into the book yet?
Yeah, well, I started out in the Air Force, young age, got out, went into law enforcement pretty much right away. My local PD, went through the ranks, made captain, was elected to local politics. Served on a bunch of different boards, mainly enterprise funds, like water boards, Board of Education, before the crazy days, and then went on to town council and lobbied in Washington, got off the PD and retired, ended up consulting for businesses now. You get real good at disassembling bad situations and helping people out. So I'm working with great people now and different challenges than law enforcement.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. And the book for me is actually, it's like a release. You know, I can kind of watch things, and these are things. Some of the people, my friends that know me, some of the stuff, the ones who know me well, who read the book, like, oh my God, this is like stuff you've talked about for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one of them. Just Peter Romano just checked in. Yeah, I know Pete real well. He was one of the guys that helped me read the early versions of the book. There's a few of them.
Excellent. So tell me, what made you want to write this book? What was your motivation?
Well, you see all these things going on in the world, and everybody's, believe me, you see these movies that are coming out now, and I was done with this thing long before the Civil War movie that's coming out where, California and Texas comes together. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, they obviously haven't talked to anybody from Texas. And then of course you have other ones where they show all the cars, the one that President Obama was involved in, that he came up. I mean, there's going to be no clear lines in what's coming up. And I wanted to articulate a vision, a fictional vision that I had based on pretty much, if you just took a county map of the United States and looked at how red and blue places are, let's face it, those are going to be probably your logical dividing lines.
Yeah.
In the version that I give in American Calamity. And that's how I kind of break it out. And then from there, I said, what kind of scenario would kick this thing off? And I came up with what I came up with. And And all that, by the way, the prologue, even though it is a fiction book, the prologue of the book starts off with a bunch of, the Chinese superiority plan, I refer to it as, right? And there is no such thing, I don't believe, in their doctrine. However, if you read that quote, which is actually true, all those things that I line out there are all those dates were all dates in which presidents made those things happen. And they were Republican and they were Democrat. So I'm an equal opportunity hater when it comes to that. It's like there was, as you go through it and you start seeing like who opened the doors finally. Well, it was Nixon. Who gave him trading status? It was Bush and Clinton.
Right.
And you just keep going through the chain. And the one thing I've always was fascinated with is how people underrate the tenacity of the Chinese culture. I don't discount these folks no more than I discount the tenacity of the Russians. These are highly intelligent people, and they know what the hell they're doing. Not to our interests, I might add. The BRICS currencies and all the other stuff coming up. People and most Americans, they don't even know how their mill rate is put together. So try to imagine explaining world events like this. So I tried to make it fun to read, but at the same time, kind of give you a little background on how bad it is and how bad it can get.
Well, when I'm reading it, I'm thinking about what's going on in the news today and the state of the world of what's going on now and how much it's happening at the beginning of this book. You talked about how things kind of unfold. Well, we're kind of witnessing it in our world, and
so my friends know this. I'll share this with everybody on this call.
Well, it's private. This is private. What we're in right now. Only three of us. And
yeah,
a few of our close friends. So.
No. Yeah. Well, what I'll tell you, a lot of people, what they don't know is I started writing this book before Russia invaded Ukraine. So, right.
Wow.
So the book was done.
Well. Yeah.
Like the rough draft was done. And my friends were asking me, they're like, there's no way they're doing that. We're going to knock them back. I said, listen to me. The only reason why they haven't invaded yet is they're waiting for the Chinese to finish their Olympics. The moment they're done with the Olympics, they're going in. And I was laughed at, and I'll say Pete knows because I have coffee with him every week. Yeah. And I would say this over and over again. Well, then I finished the bones of the book, and that editing process took me the better part of, oh Lord, a year and a half. For the editing. It was my first book. I wanted to make sure I got it right. I do know where all the moles are in my baby, but the reality was that was done probably just 2 months after they had invaded Ukraine. That whole book was pretty much written.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it was rough, but
yeah,
it's people don't keep track of things. If you don't get outside your own bubble and you don't get into it more, where you want to learn about world history without putting your own prejudices on it.
Right.
The Tucker Carlson interview. Did you guys watch that?
Which one?
The one he did with
Putin? Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So what people don't realize in that interview, twice Putin said this. He gave the history lesson because overseas, for those that have traveled know this, if you've really gotten in to talk to people, they'll tell you that they view us as stupid when it comes overseas as our own history. I know this from the times I went overseas competing, and these were people I would have beer with, and it wasn't adversarial. It was just like, Edward, do you know, and that kind of stuff. And then, but Putin gave that history lesson at the beginning because that's the general thoughts in Europe about us.
Right.
And we don't know history. I'm not saying it wasn't propaganda, as it was very good. But that's their view. But he said something twice that most people don't pick up on. He said the words golden billion twice. Twice he said it. And when you say that, you're like, what the hell does that mean? Well, that's the West. So 7 billion more people are pissed off is basically what he's saying. And there's only 1 billion of you Westerners. And we're called the golden billion because we have all the money. That's why they formed BRICS. So I don't really get into that in the book, but these are all the world issues that I was watching take place, and I had to be picky on what I decided to put into the book. So I put a little bit about the economy in there, but I didn't get into it.
Got it. I've got a question for you. What is your thoughts on the Moscow incident?
Oh, well, So if you're somebody that believes everything that comes out, you would think that, well, it must have been ISIS-K that did that. But when you start really looking behind the scenes and you're pulling back the curtain, they were heading back to Ukraine, and the Russians were monitoring their phones, talking to people back in Ukraine. So it's probably linked to Ukraine. And here's the bad part about that. And I hope to God it's not the case.
Hmm.
But if it's linked back to Ukraine, guys, it's our fingerprints are going to be on it, because Ukraine doesn't do anything unless they have the permission of the United States. And that's scary to me, because
Agreed.
that's and now with F-16s and everything else we're putting, you got to understand the Russians view the F-16s as a clear and present danger that they're going to get nuked preemptively. Just, let that sink in. I mean, that's the kind of, we're closer to nuclear war right now than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We had a janitor where I used to work at the PD who actually was on one of those destroyers in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I remember him telling us, a few stories. He was a great guy. And he was telling us how close we were then. And we're way beyond that. I mean,
that's for sure. Understatement there.
Yep. And I mean, you got everybody teeing up, and it's just, I don't think people fully realize, and I get into that in the book too, about, how fast it unwinds.
Right.
It doesn't take much, and keep in mind too, it's like, for those of you who are into it, you have the Iranians, for instance, right? They always talk about the Iranians. We have to understand something. If they EMP us, that's okay. Nuking us on the ground is not okay. It's like, it has to do with religious. I guess one of them is religiously acceptable because they don't directly kill anybody. But if you starve to death and because of the electricity going off, that's fine. And I read that, and it was interesting. I think Scott Ritter, I think, was explaining that.
So let me ask you this: so if that's their belief for the Iranians, and they funded Hamas going into Israel, now how is that okay?
Yeah, so what you're seeing. Well, I guess it's different then, because one thing you'll learn, at least I've learned over the years, is it's all BS anyways. I personally think it's like, this is okay, and I don't know why they say that, but I don't believe anything that I read anymore, because we're just not there's no reporters asking hard questions.
Right.
The ones that are getting chucked in jail. So, I mean, I'm always suspect of everything. Even Scott Ritter, I can't even believe they still let him on Judge Napolitano. I listened to him again today talking about the Moscow attacks. And we're so close. EMP, try to imagine the diplomatic problem you have is if we get EMP'd. So we get EMP'd, nobody dies.
Right.
So, maybe some planes go down, maybe something like that happens. And that's still dubious if that would happen. But let's say for a minute that happened. You didn't kill anybody. Oopsie doopsie. We didn't mean for this to happen. So what do? Do you do a full strike? We're not equipped to do EMP in the United States. We don't, that I know of, So how do we respond to that as a country? I mean, there's so many wickets here that are dangerous. And I only gave one scenario in American Calamity, just one.
Well, in the mid chapters, when all of it's, and I don't want to give away any of the book for those that don't read it, but there is that what you talked about uncoiled really quick, where all of these other countries were involved in something, right? If you had to name one country that you think would do that to us, who would it be? Who would be your number one pick?
North Korea.
Really? Everyone's eyes are on China. Everyone's eyes are on Russia. Iran. You think it would be North Korea? Yeah,
I think that North Korea's got. I think that they'll be I paint them in the book that way too. I mean, that fractional orbiting system that the Soviets came up with, their satellites go from south to north. That's real. I put that in the book. That's actually something that's real.
What does that mean for people that don't understand that?
So in NORAD, everything we get from NORAD is for the old threat coming across the Arctic, and they would pick up the missiles being launched. And then, of course, we would prepare and we would launch our counterstrike. Well, if the satellites are coming from the south to the north, we have no NORAD at the south. We don't have any SORAD, so, we're screwed. We won't even know when it happens. So the scenario I give is that they actually have 3 satellites, and they EMP us. And it's not hard to do, and it's nobody's like, oh Jesus, that's kind of, I don't know if that could happen. I had nobody yet who's read the book say that couldn't happen, because they all look it up, because the stuff I put in there, I've researched the hell out of it.
Now, would we know it was them, or would we think it was someone else?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think nobody would try to imagine EMPs go off. Just let's try to just put this in perspective for a minute. EMPs go off, all your communications are dead. They're dead. They're gone. You're not communicating. It's over. Your electrical systems are going to turn to slag. It's the vehicle thing. I'm not totally sure, but it won't make a difference because none of your radios are going to work. You're going to have all these different, all your modes of communication is dead. This stuff can't happen. We're doing right now. This is a no-go. You're going to have the emergency broadcast system probably won't be able to work for at least till the atmosphere cleans up. And the best time to hit us is in the morning, by the way. That's why in the book it's in the morning. And because if the sun's facing us, it's not the best time to do it.
Why is that?
That's, there's guys far smarter than me that do that, but there's a couple books here, Blackout Wars and Electric Armageddon, that was written by Dr. Peter Pry. And these guys were talking about how the atmosphere is and what makes it better for the EMP to work in the early morning hours. It has something to do with the atmosphere. And Peter Pry, he died, he left us in February of 2022 or 23. Brilliant man. He was on the federal commission. I had given you that information for the federal EMP commission.
Right.
He served on that with another guy called David Pine, another brilliant person. And EMP, just try to imagine, all communication goes down, so there's no messaging. So everybody is going to be going, well, who did this to us? You're not going to know.
So even military grade.
That's everybody hypes this up, and there's probably veterans on this call right now that are out there. But look at your average military base. There's no magical electrical generation system on a military base. They're taking all their power off the grid. Their food is coming in from people that have contracts out in society that bring the food onto the base. There's no pallets and pallets and pallets of MREs that are going to be, because how are you got to supply food to your dependents, to your members, to civilian personnel working on it. We're not in the position that people seem to think we are for an EMP event. And so it's a problem. All this stuff, all the way down, like with a military base, we're not that prepared. The grid goes down. The military is going to be hugging for a while, I think.
And the military satellite, same thing.
Yeah, I don't know what they can take. If an EMP goes off, satellites are coming down, and
Falling
that's
right
another
out of
one.
the sky.
Yeah, they're going to be gone. They're going to be affected, like it was a coronal mass ejection, but I would assume probably worse.
So we were talking about Starlink, gone.
Yeah, it's going. To wipe out swaths of these things. The whole atmosphere is covered with them, but wherever they go off, anything in range there, do they survive? I'm betting no. And cars, I did a lot of research on cars. Some believe all of them shut off, like all of them. They all go poof. Some believe that barely any are going to go off. After reading all the research that I did, and I kind of did this in the book, you're going to have about 15% of the cars are going to go down and they're never coming back. So 15% is a lot.
What's that based on? Is there anything like particular about the vehicle?
Research. Well, they're all modern vehicles. They all have some type of computer packs in them, and there's some type of circuitry. Some are more vulnerable than others. People are like, well, my car is kind of like its own Faraday cage. Not really. And I sit back and some of the things that I watch when it comes to that. But anyways, the research that they did, they get a lot of criticism when they did this in the EMP report. But the reality is they still tested cars with EMP type devices. Right. So they've done that on other people have done them on like iPhones and laptops close in. and they've survived.
Right.
Right. So no Faraday bag, they survived. Right. And I'm thinking, well, but with cars, what people are missing out on is, let's say you have an electric car plugged in. It's going to go through thermobaric shock or a thermobaric burning. It's going to just take off, I mean, but if it's not plugged in, I don't think the electric cars get affected. They haven't tested them, but I don't think they get affected. I think in the long run, as long as you can produce electricity, they might actually work. The biggest enemy you're going to have is stale gas, because gas is going to get produced. So even if your car survives,
having a lot of
it's
fuel,
only going to last so long.
Stabilizer.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, so it's like
you're pump fuel.
Yeah, it's so wouldn't it be kind of funny if 20 years after or 5 years after something happens, the only cars running down the road are a Rivian, right? Some guy,
that would
his battery is crap, but he's still putting down the road, right? I mean,
right. If you have any contacts, anyone that's on with us right now with Elon, maybe that'd be a good question to ask him about. If Tesla's thinking about this EMP thing, and if a vehicle's not plugged in, if it would survive. That's a good test for the Cybertruck. Everyone's shooting it with 50 caliber.
Yeah, a little EMP will take it right out, right? Plugged in.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, I think the plug-in thing is where it would fail. I think that's, you get the charge on, and I point this out in the book, like what happens, like why does the ham radio go down on Tony, right? Why does that happen? EMP comes in 3 waves, right? E1, E2, and E3. E3 is the most destructive, the way the research that I've looked into, and it's the smallest area that's covered. But when that puppy hits, even the water pipes, the iron water pipes in the ground absorb EMP. So I mean, this is like, this is serious stuff. Anything that's metallic acts as an antenna, and it does like anything else does. It just follows its natural course until that energy is expended. Well, most of them are going to go into transformers and are going to be gone. So yeah, the book kind of gets into that.
Right. And our transformers come from where?
What's that?
Who makes our transformers?
Oh, that's a good point. They bring that up actually. So we don't make them here in the U.S. Surprise, surprise. They're made in Germany, I believe. They're all about as big as a 1,000-foot square house. They're very individualized. I'm sure they have some that have commonality in parts and pieces, but they're huge, and they're all custom.
And they're all stockpiled, ready to go in case something happens.
No, there's not. There's like none. And
about 3 years.
You aren't getting your grid back up for years. It'll be measured in years before the electricity comes back on. And we live in a society in which we're just in time. My grandmother, I'll share this with you. When I was a young kid, my grandmother lived through the Depression, and she would tell me stories, and I liked listening to them. I was the oldest grandchild, and I love listening to her stories about the Great Depression. And she said, and of course she's Polish, so I was edu, right? So edu, she says, how you're all going to die next time? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I was, kind of poo-pooing the person getting food from the farm thing. I was, being a typical 12-year-old, right?
Right.
And she goes, you're going to starve. That's how you're going to all die. You're going to starve. And I'm like, how are we going to starve, Graham? Blah, blah, blah. And she goes, we all had farms during the Depression. We didn't even feel the Depression as a family. We got hungry, went out back, we slaughtered a pig, and we ate it. Somebody walked from the center of town, which was a long walk, and we had a lot of Italian immigrants, and they would come to town, and they would walk up. My grandmother said they would get out to the farm, torn, shoe leather, and they would give them food. But she says there was always food. Nobody went hungry. And I'm thinking, oh my God, and that stuck with me, my whole life. I thought, geez, for a lady like that to say that, you sit back and wonder, I wonder how right she is. And the older I get, I'm like, you know what? She's right. Just in time, your warehouses that supply your food districts, they've only got, like days of food. Days. That's why, I had a good friend of mine, more than that, he's like a brother to me. And he told me when the paper products run out, that's when the system is completely stressed. And it's almost hitting its breaking point. When did that happen? Last.
We all know. Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah.
2 rolls per.
Right.
And that's it, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
running around trying to find it. Terrible.
So we had some questions for you, Ed. I know, David, you had a few, and I had a few from listeners who had sent a message to us to ask you questions when we're on with you. By the way, I want to say hi to TK, Jennifer, Jeff. Thanks for chiming in on the chat.
Jennifer,
Peter, Liza, good to see you. Say hello in the chat. If you're liking this content, hit that like button. And David, why don't you go with your first question?
Yeah, so actually, I got a quick question to follow up on your the 3 phases of the EMP. I don't know if you can quickly explain that. Why would the 3rd phase be the most, have the most impact on us?
And how would those phases come? Like, how far apart?
You're talking milliseconds, all of them.
Wow.
The first one's kind of long and fast. The second one is supposedly not the worst. The third one, though, is very concentrated. And it's like it does something to the magnetic in the way. I'm not an electrician expert, just know from reading these books. The third one is more concentrated, and that's the one that penetrates things and gets in and really does a number.
All 3 of those hit the first,
All
second,
3
and
of them
third within a second.
It's gone. I mean, there's no preparing for it.
So it's not like 1 hour,
Wow.
3 hours later, and then 4 hours. It's instantaneous.
Boom, 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 and it happens so fast that it's. But E3 is like that's the one. If that's
Gotcha.
that's the most destructive. And if you look at like the patterns they show, they almost look like smiley faces. And on all the research they did, and the rings go out. So like the light pink ring is the widest. That's your E1. It goes the furthest.
Right.
And then the second one is E2, and it's almost as big as the E1, but the E3 one is like a keyhole almost, but it's so powerful and concentrating in that area. That's the one that when it goes out, it really everything's just slag. And that's
Wow.
I said if Zeus was to design a lightning bolt, that's the one he would do.
Yeah.
So
it's impressive at how fast it hits.
Well, it's over. I mean, it's like most of them, like lightning arresters that you have, good ones, right? In the books, they'll tell you they might work, they might not, because it's so fast. It's faster than lightning. Put that in perspective. I mean, that lightning's pretty quick. I mean, I've seen plenty of lightning strikes in my day, and so faster than lightning. So it's serious. EMP is serious. I mean, people discount it. They're like, that'll never happen. Oh no, it's bad.
Right. And if it doesn't happen from a man-made event, it's going to happen from the natural perspective of a solar flare. Yeah.
So CME or coronal mass ejections, they only do E1 and 2. 3 is from a nuke. That's a special byproduct of a nuke, from what I understand.
Okay.
So they're both. E1 and 2 are still sucky.
Well, look at what's happened when the last one happened, right? What it took out and how it burned everything up in the telegraph system and so forth. That was an E1 and E2, but that's a good example of it still fried everything. So
we just had one. We just had a light one hit us just a few days ago.
Right.
Did you see the Aurora in Maine? Did you get to see the Aurora in Maine? It was a big enough hit where
it was clouded over.
Oh, too bad.
I've seen it a few times here already. But
that's on my bucket list. If you see it in Maine, that means the Earth is fighting off some serious stuff. That's what that means.
We've seen it twice in the past 6 months.
Yeah. Bad time right now with the sun, by the way. It's a lot of sunspots, but that's a whole nother. The book doesn't even get into that. I might touch on that in book 3. I see Jeff Kahn asked when book 2 is coming out. Just came back the first editing phase on book 2. I'm going through now. It's got 3 more to go. I'm hoping by the summer.
By the summer, it will be ready to be published and out?
Yeah, that's my goal. And then I'll start working on 3. I'm busy with business stuff right now, but I already know how the bones of book 3.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Dennison,
book is pretty good.
Sorry, Dennison, just want to say hello. Thanks for joining us. Mark, you're on from Lisbon.
Hey, Dennison.
Thanks, Mark, for joining us. We are on with author Edward Pocock III, talking about American Calamity, asking lots of questions. If you have questions, guys, you're co-hosting the show if you're on with us right now, so please type a question in the comments for Edward, and we'll answer it for you live here. We're also going to be going to the after party in a little bit. When we go to the after party, that's where we're going to be a little bit more uncensored and open about our conversation, not have to worry about the social gods watching over everything and analyzing what we're saying and telling us what we can and can't say. So anyway, feel free to ask questions here. If you prefer to wait for the after party, you can do that as well. If you're liking this content, please hit that like button. David, can I go with my next question?
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll tee off after that.
Talk about Faraday bags, and you talked about whether or not cell phones would be fried. And okay, so the cell phone's not fried, but the cell network is. So you have a brick that if your music's downloaded, maybe you can listen to your music. But if it's you had mentioned, we had previous conversations, obviously, that if it's an app that needs a handshake, which means it's got to connect to the internet to say this is valid, let them connect. That's not going to work, which is most of the apps on a phone.
That's right.
But what about a handheld ham radio, handheld GSMR radio? If it's not in a Faraday bag and it's not turned on, not plugged into a charger, could that survive, or would it be best in a Faraday bag? Yeah,
so I would always put it in a Faraday bag.
Okay.
Only because I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know a lot more than I know. And so when it comes to that, I don't want to risk it, especially if the radio that I've designated with people that I know is going to be a radio that we're going to find ourselves using. So I don't want to risk it, with the people that I know that are going to be depending on getting a hold of me.
Right.
And them for that, to me to be so arrogant to think that I had that much knowledge that I would do that. I would rather Faraday bag. I mean, they make some really nice ones, $40. They seal up, make sure it seals. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, let me give a plug here quick. You guys on this channel provide good information to people, like accurate information. I've been watching, checking in. I was telling you a couple of days ago, I was listening to you guys talk about this, and really good stuff. I mean, this is valuable stuff, what you guys are talking about. And it's not tin hat crap. It's just, if something goes bad, just be prepared for it. Doesn't mean you have to be, Fruit Loops about it. It just means you have to. Every person should be prepared for something. Just as a citizen,
right?
You need to at least be able to have your stuff together. And what you guys are doing on this channel, really tip of the hat. It's good stuff.
Thank you for that.
It's really cool being on. So.
And getting people on like you on with us to be able to tell your story and share your knowledge, that's priceless to be able to give to our community. So thank you for coming on with us.
Yeah, Faraday bag. Yeah, I give it a thumbs up. Do it anyway. Okay. How are you going to go wrong? I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we talked when we were setting this thing up. A while ago when we did the first test to make sure I had some technological capabilities, right? So we talked about like sewer systems and stuff that I don't even mention in the book much. People that have septic systems, most people don't know the difference between a septic and a sewer system. I know that's amazing to probably everybody on this channel, but some people don't even know the difference between septic and sewer, and they don't even know how
down for people that live in an urban area, suburban neighborhoods, where there's a public water and there is public sewer system. They don't have a septic, but they know they have public sewer because they pay the taxes on it, and they have public sewer. Tell us what the effects are going to be on public water and sewer system. On an EMP.
So I did about 9 years on a water commission, and then I did several years on chairing their sewer commission. So I'm very well aware. So the first thing you have to understand, I think what people don't a lot of times is, first let's understand what a sewer shed is and a water shed, right? So think of a roof of a house. In the peak of the roof, wherever that is and that water flows, that's the edge of a watershed. So everybody's passed signs that said you're entering such and such a watershed, right?
Right.
The cleanest water you're going to find in your water tables is going to always be at the peak of the roof or the closest to the watershed line. Oh. That means all that water flows to a river, which is the gutter. And that is and the roof may have many bends in it. Those are sewer sheds. So the water's all going to the same place, but the way the water flows to the river could be different. And so you could have one watershed, but in a town, you could have up to 13 sewer sheds. They're all the same, right? But they're all going to the same gutter.
Right.
So that water flows usually to a tributary stream, and they go down. Well, what's the one common denominator in all the things I just discussed? Pitch. Any plumber will tell you, right? So if you're in a sewer system, well, first let's do wells. If you have a well and you're on the edge of a watershed, your water is going to be pure, as pure as it's going to get, because that's no contaminants, right?
Right.
Just keep the well going. Find a way to make it happen. If you have public water and you're at the edge of a watershed, it would be unusual actually for you to have public water at the edge of a watershed because of the elevation, unless there was a tall enough water tower that could provide you that, because it's all based on hydraulics. That stuff's going to be down in 7 days. You know, and you keep in mind, if an EMP happens, people are going to want to be with their families. You got about 7 days worth of fuel. If the SCADA systems, the supervisor control and acquisition data, or supervisor control and data acquisition, SCADA, doesn't get fried by EMP, and it will. So that'll be dead. Your water systems could go down day one. So you're going to have to find a different way to get water. If you have septic, you're good till you have to pump it out. Right. So when you need the honey pot to come get rid of it, that's when you know you're out of room. And then the other one is your sewer. If you live at a high elevation at the start of a sewer line, all your stuff is going to go down to a lower area. And the moment it hits a pump station, they're all fried. A lot of sewer has to get pumped up to get back to an elevation where it can go to the sewer plant. So most people don't know. They know the bill and they know what they pay, but they don't really understand that your sewage coming from a high on the hill could end up in somebody else's basement further down the line. Right? I mean, that's, and backflow, right? And so it's these are things that if it's not a gravity system, and assuming nothing gets clogged, going to the sewer plant, and it at any point hits a choke point where it's got to be pumped, it's gonna start back up. And there's a lot of pressure on water. I mean, we've been to calls where we've seen sewage coming in. It's like a Mount Vesuvius, when the pressure's high enough. So it doesn't take long to fill up a basement.
Everyone's flushing their toilet and at home because there's nowhere to go, right? And the good news with that is some people will never know how to get water in the toilet to flush it. The second time, right?
You get a lot of people. I mean, they just don't know the basics of how their home runs.
Right.
And I mean, there's so many factors here on that. So that's one. That's the difference. But a lot of people, when I explain the watershed, sewer shed thing, it gives you a whole new perspective on how you view the water around you.
Right.
And the purity of it.
Right.
So,
right. Huh.
Little
David,
things.
what's your next question?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about preparedness on the channel, and one of the things that if this all was to happen, EMP attack, food depletes very quickly. What type of preparedness do you recommend for food prep?
Well, it's all about calories. In the book, Stephen Moore, the main character, he talks about his food supply, which is excessive. Yeah. But Stephen Moore is kind of an interesting character to begin with, right? But the thing you have to keep in mind is be cognizant. First off, they did studies during World War II with people, and they did starvation studies that I read, and they were giving those people minimal calories, like 1,600. It seems to ring a bell, but it was not enough. And by 21 days, these people were like losing their minds. And of course, people be like, well, that's okay. That's fine, Ed, but I'm going to take 2,000 calories a day. All right. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. 2,000 calories. If you're a male my size, and I'm not too rotund, but my BMR, my basal metabolic rate, BMR, and there's a formula for that. You can look it up online. But I know for me, that's 1,822 calories. That's laying like a fish in my living room, eating and doing the basics of living, drinking. That's it. 1,822 calories just for that. You do exercise, and when I'm saying you got to chop wood, you got to go outside, fix things. I mean, so you're going to be doing some exercise.
Right.
You're looking at 2,500 to 2,600 calories if you're not killing it. That's a day. Women, it's less. But you start totaling that up, and so it comes down to like I have one schedule that I show for a male and a female. It's about 44, almost 4,500 calories a day between the two of them. The male would eat more just strictly because of the
workload
bodies
and body.
Well, you burn more as a man. You just burn more fuel internally, calories, and they're way less. Women weigh less too, in most cases. So that fits in. But you can work out your own BMR. The point of the matter is, you're burning through 4,500 calories a day. So you got to figure what the EMP goes off or something bad happens. The first 90 days, it's going to be, first 3 days, people are going to think, well, the power is going to come back on. We don't know what's going on right now. Things are going to be okay. By day 3, your freezers are all empty. You've had your block parties. You've all had your conversations in the neighborhood, and you're going, hey, when's the power going back on? No, there's no communication. Remember, we talked about that.
Right.
So you're going to have no concept what the hell's going on. Somebody's going to want to make a ride to town or to center or wherever you live, and they're not going to have any information. I'm willing to bet your emergency management directors are going to be nowhere to be found. And it's going to get worse. Then you're going to go back. Then the panic's going to start setting in. And that lima bean jar that you have in the back that you normally give away to the Cub Scouts when they're doing food drives is going to look like a gourmet meal after about 7 or 8 days.
Right.
And your cabinets are going to empty. So depending on what you have in your cabinets, the thing you want to do is you want to plan out, you should have 90 days. And this is no different than what my grandmother taught me as a kid. How many of you remember, especially ex-geners, going down in your grandmother's basement and it's full of canned food?
Yeah.
Like mason jars everywhere right? You don't see that today. And they were always worried about all post, depression people. They were like, hey, you don't screw around with this. You want to make sure you have at least a month's worth of food.
Right.
Well, research I've done, I'd say 90 days. You want to have 90 days freeze dried, by the way. That's the way to go. And don't buy garbage.
Yeah. Or freeze dry it yourself.
Yeah. If you got a freeze dryer, that's even better. But you go to like freeze dry wholesalers. They make the food for the military. They're the ones that you'll find on submarines and stuff like that. And, you go there and that's the stuff you want. And then you want to pack it away. Even though it's packaged well, you want to package it away. Right. Just keep it. Pretend like it's not there. 25, 30 years, this stuff's still going to be just as good as it was when you bought it.
Wow.
God forbid you had to open it. But
and you got to look at the calorie count.
It's all about calories.
Yeah.
It's all about calories. You got to figure if you've got, let's say, you got a 4 males and 4 females, you're burning 4,600 calories a day on a schedule that I have in which you're doing absolutely nothing.
Right.
And by the way, on that one, you're fasting one day. You have to learn these things. And it was, I see Samantha commented on there, but you have to learn how to produce food 100%. Yeah. Seeds, you should be learning your growing season. People just don't know these skills anymore. Even canning, basics of stuff. But if you have a freeze dryer, Jamie, that's the way to go. That's the way to go.
Calorie count and freeze dry.
You got to know calorie count, and you got to know what lasts. To answer David's question more, it's all about calorie count. David, know your BMR, and then figure out what your BMR plus doing chores is going to be. Because if you think you're going to work less during an event like this, no one's going to be fit. Yeah. These jowls will all be gone, This little bit of baby fat I got here.
Guys, thanks for joining us here on YouTube and other platforms that you might be watching on. If you have questions for Edward, please type it in the comments box. Samantha, we appreciate you chiming in, and you're absolutely right. You got to learn how to produce food and be self-reliant. And Edward mentioned it earlier in the conversation about having community, being able to work together with others. Because if you think you're going to go about this as lonesome self or just you and your significant other, you're wrong. You need to have other people you can rely on to be able to, one, help with food and help with protection is a whole other arena we haven't talked about. Because after those 3 days, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, people are going to really start going into that mode of I'm going to kill you for whatever you have, and I'm going to try to take it. That's survival reality, right? Yeah. And how long before that happens, Edward?
And once the panic starts, when people start getting hungry, you got to figure by day 10.
Yeah.
You got to figure people when their stomach starts rumbling, and they can't feed their kids. Yeah. You're going to see something like that. I pray to God it doesn't happen, but. Good Lord, it seems like our leaders want a war. Yeah. And the worst part about it is if it kicks off, this isn't going to be like World War II.
Right.
And if this happens, you're going to have people starving to death. And, I remember as a police officer, we ran exercises, they had drive through and get your supplies.
Mhm.
That's guys like me and others that I was with on the job, we laughed at that. We were like, there's going to be no order to this.
Mm.
You're going to have these people freaking the hell out, and of course, and then they're going to be waiting in a line, burning gasoline
Right.
that they can't replenish.
Right.
It's people for Cocoa Puffs. I mean, people aren't going to do that. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. The one person you should be able to rely on is yourself, right?
and
Absolutely.
in small local farms, TK mentions in here,
Yeah.
promoting small local farms. Your best friend is a local farmer.
Yeah.
At that point. And if you're living in a community that's small enough, and I've told you, I said I love the places. I love Maine and New Hampshire. All those areas up in there, these small little tight knit communities. You're going to be dependent on one another. You're going to be looking out for each other. Like in the book, there's a couple mentions in there how Stephen Moore and his group they barter with the people in Maine,
Right.
where he lives in Andover. Which is a real place.
We already barter up here. And where
Well,
I live up
Maine
here
has
in
always
the
been
north.
ahead of it. Everybody says to me all the time, one of the things that, why'd you use Maine? I mean, the Maine is like one of your main, like focus areas. I says,
It's funny.
if you look at Maine and the way it's structured as far as how they vote, you have a conservative upper half of Maine along with the north, the down east section of Maine, right? Where in Washington County, way up there in that top corner, right?
Yep.
Those are really conservative areas of Maine. So the dividing line in my theory is the only place in the whole country where I saw a natural like north-south thing from like the 1800s, 1860 was in the state of Maine. Of all places, the Battle of Little Round Top, fame. And then where is it? It's in Maine, and that's why I chose Maine. That's the reason why, because it's the difference in culture between the counties in the north in Maine compared to the counties on the coast. Closer you get to Boston, it's night and day.
It really, really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever? My wife brings up the where they have that picture, and some people see a pink sneaker, some people see a blue sneaker, right? The people up in the north see one color, those people down there, and you can't change it. It's just their way, and they view things, right?
I say that in the book too, by the way. In the beginning, I said I think it was at the very beginning where I think Moore says, I wonder when it's going to get to the point where people start painting their doors blue and red. It's kind of scary when you think about it, but we're a mess.
We really are.
I've never seen it this bad. I mean, in my lifetime, that's why the book was written. It's a fictional piece, but I've had more people.
It's so
come up
dead
to me
on. It's really,
very relatable.
And Samantha's saying lots of conservatives in Western Maine. Absolutely, Samantha. Western Maine up through Northern Maine, Northwest. We'll consider from Augusta over to New Hampshire, and then north is basically where we're calling these lines, right?
Yeah, and I'm partial to. I like that area of Western Maine. That's kind of like my favorite. That Andover area, and I love that area up in there. It's just I think it's a gem. And
I'm calling you up here, right?
What's that?
I'm calling you up here. I want you to get up here and make it home.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on doing some business stuff now, but my goal is by 60, I'd like to have my worst problem being how many eggs did the hens lay for me today when I'm going out to the hen house for my breakfast?
In Maine.
In Maine, yeah. I ain't gonna do that here.
Yeah.
Kidding me? They'll send a freaking popo after me for doing if I wanted to do what I want to do here.
Oh, in Connecticut.
Yeah, Connecticut, forget it.
That's a glorious state. Great place to live.
We get made fun of by everybody, but
we do. We do.
Yeah,
we make it easy though.
Mike chimed in too with Samantha. Let's not shortchange Western Maine.
I love Western Maine. You guys
absolutely.
I meant Western Maine. I mean, he goes to Andover, which is Western Maine,
right?
So almost as west as you can get. And I love that whole area, Oxford County, Maine. One of the supporting characters in there is a fictional sheriff from Oxford County, Maine. So he makes an appearance.
I've read him. Oh yeah, and he kind of likes him.
It's when you first meet him, he first meets Moore. He doesn't really understand whether or not Moore is a friendly or
they're both trying to figure things out, right?
Yeah, and actually, if you think about it, the sheriff wasn't all that far off because
Right.
the government has plans for more.
Oh,
You get the book; it's got enough twists, and it's got a tank in it.
I mean, you
Yes.
can't go wrong
You
with
can't
a
beat
tank.
that.
I
And
want
when I say tank, it's a cute tank. I mean, for those that don't know tanks, it's an M5A1 Stuart tank that actually Moore decided that he wanted to rig it up. So it's a working tank.
Right.
The 37 millimeter barrel works,
why are
the
you
name
trying
of
to
the
say
tank
it's a
is
cute tank or a small tank? It's a tank. There is
well,
no. It's a little tank.
Well, I'm not going to get somebody like David's brother into it. That's for sure. I'd have to grease him up, right? I mean, it's a pretty small tank.
Michael won't fit in it.
I oil them up good, maybe, but I had
Right.
but the egg in a bottle. Yeah, that's right.
That's right,
And then but the Spanky's in there, and it's like they're a World War II reenactment crew, 4 of the main characters in the book. I think it's a fun book. I think people, for those that have read it, that are almost through it, I've gotten, I'll tell you the best review I got, right? So my mom, if I was on a Little League team, she wouldn't say I was the best person in there, even if I was the best, right? My mom is like a horrible critic, right? I mean, it's like, I love her to pieces, but she don't take any crap. So I'm going down to lecture command officers down in Louisville. I go down there twice a year, and I'm checking into the Marriott, and I get a text. I read your book. I'm like, oh boy, and I'm thinking, so I pack up, I go in there. She was thrilled with it. She said she loved it. It was the best compliment I've gotten, period. I mean, there's a lot of good ones I've gotten, but
Right.
hers was the best. I mean, the fact that, because if she didn't like it, she would have been the first one to say to me, yeah, you probably shouldn't embarrass yourself a second time. Literally, that's what she would have said.
She wouldn't hold back.
Yeah.
That's why I love her. That's why I love her.
So we're on live right now on YouTube and our other platforms, talking with Edward Pocock III, author of American Calamity, an amazing book. I recommend to everyone that you order this book, you read it, because you need to get ready for the second one that's coming out this summer as well. There's a link in the description for you to be able to order this book. And if you guys have questions for him, feel free to type them in the comments. We'll get them asked live. We're going to be heading over to the after party in a little bit, where you can ask him some more questions over there, and there'll be a little bit more of a casual conversations. If you aren't a member of T4 Survival yet, it's free and easy. While we're talking here, you can head over to T4 Survival, click on the Become a Member link, just put in your name, email, and we'll get you approved to be able to join the after party. If you're joining us in the after party, once you get your login credentials and you're approved, once you log in, go to the members tab in the top, click live stream. You'll find a little image there that you click to join the after party. Type in your name and you are in. If for some reason you go there and it's not letting you in, refresh your page, give it a few seconds, and then try again. Sometimes people, as they start mass logging in at the same time, it will be a little bit harder to get in. So just give it a few seconds, try again. You should be able to get in with our server space that we have there. So I have a... Jeff just said in the comments, considering the world events, portions of the book were frightening, and 100%. I can't stress that enough. Reading this and sitting and I just read something. I'm like, oh, Edward, you got my mind. Like, pause for a second. I look up in the air and I'm like, holy shit. What we're going through in the world right now. And this was written pre everything that's going on. And you even told us earlier in this conversation online, this was written pre-invasion of Ukraine. And that's even in this book. So
prophetic. It's just, you just look at the tea leaves and you see what's going on. And like I said, I remember telling my friends, they're not going in until China has its Olympics.
Right.
There's such a deep respect. This is what people, in the West, we got to understand. There is a deep alignment between Russia and China, which I might add was one of Nixon's biggest fears. I mean, Nixon was a lot of things, but he was a master diplomat. Putting aside all the quirks that he had, he was a master diplomat, and he said the worst thing that could happen to us is China and Russia align, and now they're aligned. I mean, we're not undoing that in our generation. We'll be dead.
Yeah,
it's hopefully not prematurely, because we seem hell bent on wanting to go to war. I mean, we just do.
Not
and there's going to be
us,
four of
but
them.
our administration. Yeah.
There's four areas. You got Israel, you got the Ukraine, you got Taiwan, and then you got Korea. And Korea is just looking for an excuse to explode. I mean, I think that if they see us weak, they're going to make the move.
Yeah.
And
we sometimes hear from people that jump onto the YouTube afterwards that are sitting in their mother's basement in Kentucky typing, you guys are crazy, you're nuts, and all that. But the reality is, we're not nuts, we're educated. And we do our research, and we, I go into something, Ed, and I try to keep an open mind. Let me look at both sides here, right? And then let me come to my own, what I think is going to happen, or what's really happening in this situation. And everything leads to, we're going down a really dark, bad road. We're already in a dark, bad road, but we're stepping on the accelerator and continuing down that path, which is scary.
Yeah, we are. There was TK had a good question there. So what happens to off-grid solar and the batteries? It all comes down to the switches. Jamie's heard me say that a million times. It's all about the switches. So I mean, what I would recommend is, if you have, the batteries should be fine. Find some way to protect it. They make different ways of protecting those systems. Jamie, you probably would know more on that. It's like ferrite magnets. There's a guy out there that does this stuff. Maybe the same group you've been talking to. But, if you have a controller that's important, buy a spare. One is none and two is some. And take the controller. Like, even for me, I'll give you an example. I happen to be happy with my Ineos Grenadier. Just got it. And Moore drives it in the book. Well, a prototype. But buy an extra module. Put it in a Faraday bag. Throw it in the safe. The computer module. The thing fries. If I'm wrong and the research is wrong, and it does fry all the cars, those with a module, a computer module, are going to be the ones that are going to still have operational vehicles.
Yeah. I've read the same thing. The solar panels should be fine. Batteries are probably going to be fine. It's going to be the switches that connect the two.
Yeah, that's what my research has shown me. Yeah. And there's ways of protecting that, but the critical components, you can always find batteries, if your batteries, even as long as your house don't burn down, or your shed, or wherever you keep them.
Right.
But if you're the controllers that you have, anything like that, I have a spare. If you can afford it, put it in a Faraday bag and just throw it aside, because if it goes down, you'll be thankful. And if you have solar panels, you're way ahead of most people. Oh, yeah. Way ahead.
That brings me to another point of people mentioning these Faraday blankets, where you take this big blanket and you're able to cover your solar panels and your generator and your controller and the batteries and all that, and that's crap. They don't work.
Yeah. The energy's got to go somewhere. I mean, if it's it's got to burn out or something. If it's got like a closed circuit, like a bag, it's just going to, it's not going to go inside. But if you got a blanket, it's going to ground out on your panel, so you're screwed. I mean, it's the way I understand it. I'm not saying I have any answers.
Yeah, that's the same thing we did research on. Same thing. Yeah.
And it actually said that the wave of the EMP is going to penetrate through the ground, and it's going to get underneath that blanket, and it's going to kick back up, and it's going to trap that energy.
Anything in the ground, EMP's touching it if it's metal.
Right.
No, that's the thing that blows most people away. If it's a pipe and it's in the ground, it's getting to it.
Which brings also, what if there's minerals in your ground, or you live on, where there's a lot of rock and ledge, where there's minerals, and that's probably also going to be something that's going to be able to conduct that, right?
Funny you mentioned that. So we had a house in town. Every time we had a lightning storm come through, this place got hit. Always. There's places in town that seem to have something in the ground that makes lightning say, yeah, this is the spot. If you live in one of those spots, well, it's a different kind of light. Did you find
out what it was? Was it minerals and rock that was formed around there, or no?
They just left. I think that was eventually, I don't even know if that house, I know the porch came down, and I don't know if anybody's living there now, but lightning hits. There's some places in town where lightning just seems to always want to go.
Gravitate,
and the locals know it.
Yeah.
They
it's like
know.
That guy on The Great Outdoors who got struck 666 times. Remember that? The Dan Aykroyd, John Candy guy.
Yeah, that just sucks. That's what they call that. That just sucks.
So Jeff was asking, if you have a portable solar unit, do you need to place the panels in a Faraday bag or something to protect them?
I don't know. I've never read anything that says the solar panels are going to get fried if they're, if they're in your basement or something along those lines, and you're keeping on, even like the generators. The problem is perfect case scenario.
Yeah.
You're going to put a complete Faraday cage around them, right?
Right.
But, one of the things I looked at is I got one of those big construction boxes. One of those big construction boxes.
Right.
Like, the real big ones with the two padlocks on the side.
Yeah.
I always wondered if you connected the two sides and you connected, let's say, copper connectors to them and kept everything off the side of that, would that be a Faraday cage? And that's big enough to contain a solar generator, because those boxes are expensive as hell.
Is it sealed?
Yeah. It's steel. Yeah.
Or no, sealed. If you submerge it, would water get in?
No. Well, yes, it could. It's not a tight seal, so you'd have to create
A seal.
connection. You'd have to create a connection.
Yeah.
But if you put something in there and you weren't pulling it out, you could take foil tape and go around it. Like the stuff they use on HVAC.
Right.
Yeah. Probably the same effect.
Samantha was on Tuesday, and she mentioned, she asked about the Faraday cage, and you just brought something to my attention I need to mention to Samantha. Make sure the Faraday cage covers all the way around the bottom, the top, and the sides. Not a Faraday cage where you just lay it over the top and the ground is open, because we just discussed it's kind of like that blanket won't work. It has to be completely enclosed.
And Samantha, she puts in here too, and that's an important point. It's no different with food, by the way. I wouldn't recommend cooking food, days 4 through 21.
They're going to smell it.
People are going to smell that. I mean, I hate to say it, but you're going to want, if you can store up about 7 days worth of MREs.
How about dehydrated? Did you mention that before?
Yeah, dehydrated. I mean, the only problem is dehydrated don't last as long as, I think an MRE lasts longer than dehydrated. It's still better than nothing. But
if you can it,
don't cook. Yeah, don't cook. Eat out of the jar. Don't, because they're going to smell it. I don't care where you are in the house. If somebody's starving, they're going to smell it. And the same thing, if you got a light bulb on, light discipline is going to be important too, because if somebody sees you got a light on, they're going to assume, that must be somebody who was smart enough to prepare for this. I think I'm kicking their door in tonight. And you don't want to be in that position.
I
think the other thing to think about too is be careful what you share, how much you share of what you have with supplies.
And what you're prepping with, the pre-plans.
Yeah, I'm going to starve to death. So I'll say that here so everybody knows. I'll be starving to death.
Same here.
Same
Not
here.
buying nothing.
No, I don't know what I'm going to do. The other thing that was interesting in the book was about lighting the fire. Because the neighborhood was vacated. There were crazies running around the neighborhood, and one of the people inside the house, I don't want to give the book away, said I couldn't even light the fire, because if I lit the fire, people would know there was someone inside of that home. So that's a good point too, of trying to be not observed
under the radar.
Trying to go under the radar.
Smell smoke.
Right. Well, the point to that though, and where we live, everyone has a wood stove. Power goes out regularly here for hours or days. So everyone's kind of on a wood stove. So I think locally we probably already have our stoves already lit. You know what I mean?
Yep. But it'll be different in rural areas too, though, Jamie. It's going to be so different than a suburban area like I live in. Totally different here. I mean, it's you're getting your wood populated. Yeah, you go out and you cut your own.
Right.
I mean, here it's like if you don't have somebody pampering you. You're not going to get it. I mean, it's just not the Connecticut way, not at least in the suburbs.
It's kind of like the joke when the people from outside, from away, they call it, come into town and they end up going to the grocery store and buying a bundle of wood to light their campfire. And then you look across the street and there's a forest. Trees and wood and down birch trees. And they're staying in a cabin in the forest. And they still go buy the bundles of wood at the local convenience store for $8.
Well, they didn't know what to do with a chainsaw if you handed it to them. Never mind an axe. They end up cutting their own leg off. So, and these are all skills. I mean, let's face it. Most people wouldn't even know how to put a head on an axe. I mean, these are all
they're all lost
skills. They're lost. But this has been. I'm glad people are enjoying the book. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Jamie. David, I know you are too.
That's fantastic.
We're going to be heading over to the after party in just a few minutes. And I do have another question that I want to ask here on YouTube before we head over. And if you haven't signed up for the to become a member on T4 Survival, head over there now, t4survival.com. Click the become a member link. It's free and it's easy. We'll approve you and be able to join us in the after party. We'll be a little bit more relaxed and answering some questions, uncensored, let's put it that way, where you guys can ask anything that you like, and we'll talk a little bit more freely about some things. Here's the next question. It's kind of get off the EMP thing, but we came up on Tuesday, and I know a lot of people are on right now that were on Tuesday. So I want to see what your thought process is on this. Illegal immigrants, Supreme Court said that they're allowed to have firearms, right? So if an illegal immigrant is allowed to have a firearm, does that mean that it's going to tie the hands of law enforcement of being able to say, oh, there's a person who looks like an illegal immigrant, they're printing, looks like they may have a firearm on them, probable cause, let me go, check them out and talk to them. Is that going to talk to me about that?
So I can tell you from my experience, law enforcement is so absolutely unprepared for dealing, local and state, I would assume, definitely local, so unprepared for dealing with this. I mean, you only have to watch a couple reels out of New York or Boston to understand that it's a mess. I mean, I remember even for simple traffic violations, if you stop somebody who was completely undocumented, nothing in the car for insurance, which means if they hit somebody, they're screwed. No registration. And I remember when I was a sergeant, I think it was at the time, I hauled the person in, put a bond on him for what the price of the ticket was. And I got chewed out by the prosecutor. You're not going to do that again.
He was undocumented.
That's back in 2000, by the way. Right. So do I believe that we've progressed in the law enforcement area to even address this issue? Nope. I don't think they have a concept. And they're making these approvals on things where I think what we're living in now is a world of pretend land. And, it's like, it feels good to say it because I want to virtue signal the fact that I want you get all the same rights as everybody else. And it's just not realistic. And I don't think the officers are still going to respond for safety reasons the way they always have to respond. But what do you do? What do you do if the person's printing, right? How do they go through the safety courses like in Connecticut? How are you going to register for that? Then you go through all the courses and the officer, let's say, stops you and he checks you and he finds a weapon on you and you have an ID card from your state or even a driver's license in some states.
Right.
And what's next? Now, if you live in New Hampshire or Maine, if you live there, you have the right you don't need a permit. But if you're in Connecticut, you've got to produce a permit. And then if, let's say, you have to make an arrest, how are you going to do that? The person is never going to show up for court. And if you're in New York, they're not even going to post bond. It's almost like pretend land. It's everybody's like living in this fantasy land of rules and regulations that just are they're dead letters.
Right.
All these laws, they're dead letters, and they're making it impossible for the officers on the street. By the way, I mean, it's a freaking nightmare for them, and nobody seems like they want to fix anything. So yeah, I'm baffled, Jamie.
Samantha asked, how are they going to pass a background check?
No, that's exactly right. Well, think about it. If you run their name, let's say they get a license and they get something from the state of Connecticut or another state, and they go in to buy a weapon and they have to wait so many days because they don't have a permit. Well, you have no record. So when they run you when they do the NIC check and they run you and it comes back that nothing's on your record, guess what you're walking out with?
Yep.
You're walking out with a gun. So I mean, it's like pretend.
Right.
It's all pretend. You got no background on this person at all. And it's ludicrous. I think the whole thing's ludicrous, but we're living in ludicrous times. So we got to, look at like I mentioned in the book, our folks seem hell bent on putting us into a position of war. That's what I see coming. And if you expect the sanity to be any better back here on the rules we're making based on how we're acting internationally, I say that's crazy. Look at our energy policies, for God's sakes. I mean, we're nuts. I don't understand it. So these are good questions. I appreciate Carly Davis. That's right. Yep. I can't say it better than that.
Carly Davis. Let me take a look at that comment.
Awesome info. Thank you, guys. Ridiculous that the illegal immigrants will have guns. We're on our own. Yeah, well, I mean, that's when you have an invasion in the South and you have all the stuff going on. I mean, they break the stories down there. You see how that's being handled.
Right.
I mean, you've got, Chinese centers in Mexico giving people advice and all this other crap. I mean, I'm not a believer in coinky dink, and that's pretty much what the book is. It's no coinky dink.
Right. So let me ask you, and I think I know the answer to this. Most illegals, if they're going to commit a crime, aren't going to go purchase a gun and go through that process anyway. Am I correct?
Yeah, most criminals don't. So, I mean, if you've already violated the law and crossed the border and did that illegally, I mean, what's the next step? Burglary? How about squatting? That's what they're doing now.
Oh,
So if you go to the house and you squat and you turn around and you find a firearm in a box next to the bed and you bash it open and you take the gun in the firebox, I mean, it's pretend land.
Right.
It's pretend land. And then when the police officers show up, in some states, you stay in there 30 days, you get squatters' rights to stay there. So now the owner goes up to the house and they get arrested.
Now I know that's the fact for New York. Do you know what it is for Connecticut? Is it 30 days?
No, I don't even know. I don't think there is in Connecticut. I mean, we're not that barbaric, I hope. But, I mean, to me, that's asinine. I mean, that's just like taking common law private property rights and just throwing them in, here's another one, too, I'll say to people. I give this speech all the time. We live in a common law system, right? So, when you'll hear people say the Constitution is a living, breathing document. No, it's not. That's not the design. That's civil code. That's Napoleonic code. They did that on the continent of Europe. We live in common law. In common law, that's not the way it's designed. So anytime you hear somebody say to you, well, the Charter is a living, breathing document, or the Constitution is a living, breathing document, they're idiots, historical morons, and they don't understand law. And it's not an insult, it's the truth.
Right.
Because if you're going to speak that, you obviously are not a history buff. And one thing, I give a whole lecture on the history of policing, and I have to go through speaking about common law v. Civil code or Napoleonic code v. socialist law v. Theocracy law, because there's 4 different kinds in the world, like your Sharia law would be religious law.
Sharia law, right.
That type of stuff, So, I mean, in common law is like, is the one where, you have past precedents and it matters. Civil code, you can change that shit every day if you wanted to, if you had the votes. I mean, that's what people don't. You don't want civil code. That's why the continent of Europe is a mess.
Right.
So
well, we got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, just real quick, based on squatters for Connecticut, squatters must occupy the property continuously for a statutory period of 15 years in order for them to take ownership. Yeah.
So you got 1 point for Connecticut now.
No, that is
actually great. That's
that
the best
came
thing we
up
probably have.
That reminds me. We had a situation when I was on the water department, and somebody was mowing a piece of our property, and it was like 7 years they were mowing it. And I remember one of our attorneys, we were talking, and we just happenstance started talking about the property. We had to do something to the pump station,
right?
And the person the lawyer had said, hey, if that person's taking care of that property, they're gonna be able to claim abandonment.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. That's the law you're fighting. That's exactly what it is. And it's 15 years. Thank you, David. That's right.
That's crazy.
That's 100% right. Yep. And when you said that, it tickled me. I was like, oh, I remember we had something like that once.
How about
but
that?
It's rare.
Huh. Okay.
Jamie, we ran long. I'm sorry.
No, this is great. We can continue here, but we're not going to.
No,
we're going to head over to the after party.
The Sasquatch just came in.
Oh, he did.
So
he's
sitting right across from me right now, and so
all right.
I have to make
sure he's ready to go. So, guys, we're going to sign off in about 30 seconds. We're heading over to the after party. I've already approved a few of you to be able to join us live on the after party. If you haven't gone to T4 Survival, that's a letter T, the numeral 4 survival.com. Click on the Become a Member. It's free and easy. Type in your name, email address, and it will ask me to approve you. You'll get a confirmation email that you're approved, and you'll be able to join us in the after party. To join us in the after party, once you're a member, log in. Go to the Members tab, click on Live Stream, click on the Join the After Party link, type in your name, and you are in like Flynn. and you'll be able to chat with us kind of like you are here. You won't have a camera option. We won't be able to see you, but there'll be a chat box, whether you're on mobile, desktop, or an iPad, and it will give you a little chat window where you can ask us questions and communicate with us that way at the after party. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Edward, David, do you have anything you want to say for parting words?
Yeah, and I just want to thank Ed. Everybody, go check out the book. It's fantastic. It's very addictive, and it's very relatable to everyday life that we're dealing with right now. So thanks, Ed.
AmericanCalamity.com. It's actually, if you go there, it'll link you in. You can get the, thanks, guys. You guys are
on cue.
You guys are like good. That's good. You go to AmericanCalamity.com. My daughter put that site up for me, Erica. She's terrific. And you can go over to Book Locker, and the Kindle version is $2.99. Best bargain there is.
Very good. That's awesome. So
worth every penny.
Head over there, get the book. We hope to have Edward back on again for part 2 and talk a little bit more. So guys, thank you.
Come back.
Yeah, we're heading off now, guys. We'll see you in the after party. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Take care, everyone. Good night.